lining up shortly. Martin and Zarco for Pramac. There is Jorge Martin, second on the grid. Starts from the middle of the front row. Brad Binder heads row 2 ahead of Bastianini, the World Championship leader, and Pecco Bagnaia. Oliveira, Rins and Miller there on row 3 ahead of Aleix Espargaro, Fabio Di Gianantonio, the top rookie, and Luca Marini. Marco Bezzecchi starts 13th ahead of Franco Morbidelli, who did receive a 3-place grid penalty for an infraction during the practice start session at the end of FP3 yesterday. That dropped him to 15th. He's now been promoted back up to 14th because Marc Marquez, unfortunately, who a number of those fans came to see, will not be starting this Indonesian Grand Prix due to a concussion sustained in a violent high side during the warm-up session this morning. That promotes his teammate Paul Espargaro up onto the 5th row in 15th, with Andrea Dovizioso, who's certainly got some previous in wet conditions, hasn't he? He lines up 16th ahead of Joan Mir and Alex Marquez. Maverick Vinales would be 19th on the grid ahead of the 2 Tech3 rookies of Raul Fernandez and Remy Gardner. Darren Binder is set to start 22nd, with Takaki Nakagami in 23rd. They're all, of course, chasing Fabio Quartararo, who starts from pole position.
Yeah, just actually quickly popped out of our commentary box and saw on the back of a scooter going to the Repsol Honda office was Marc Marquez. Quite a big plaster, it looks like he got on the right elbow. If that's all he got away with after that monster high side at turn 7 in this morning's warm-up, he's a very, very lucky boy. Of course, the 8-times world champion, sadly not a participant in this shortened 20-lap Indonesian Grand Prix. After that big spill this morning in the warm session, we wish Marc well and hope he's back in action, fighting fit and ready to go when we make our first trip to South America since 2019. The Termas de Rio Hondo circuit primed and ready for action there in 2 weeks' time.
So 90 seconds then until the bikes will head out onto the racetrack, and of course the riders wouldn't ordinarily push too hard on a sighting lap, but you can imagine the riders will be very, very keen when they head out there to get a real idea of what the grip levels are like. Of course, they'll do 1 lap to the grid, and then within 15 minutes of the pit lane opening, we will be off and running with the warm-up lap of this 20-lap Indonesian Grand Prix. Joan Mir, boy, has he got some work to do, starting 17th on the grid, although he hasn't felt happy or comfortable at any stage really in the dry conditions this weekend. So perhaps a wet Grand Prix might present him with an opportunity to paper over some of the cracks of what has been a really desperate weekend for the 2020 world champion.
You know, although he's been in MotoGP a couple of years, hasn't he, Joan Mir? Likewise, Fabio Quartararo, they don't have an awful lot of wet weather experience. This is a journey into the unknown as well for the rookies, the likes of Marco Bezzecchi, Fabio Di Gianantonio, Remy Gardner, Darren Binder as well. They'd have never raced a MotoGP bike in rain conditions. So Fabio Quartararo, for the first time in 9 long months, can't believe we're saying that. He was always the qualifying king of MotoGP, wasn't he, the Frenchman? But he is going to start from pole position in this 20-lap Grand Prix. The number 20 flags waving proud in the Mandalika grandstands.
Just listen to the roar. This is what the crowd have been waiting for a good couple of hours now, since the Moto2 race came to a conclusion with spots of rain in the air. They've seen plenty of rainfall since then. The green flag waves, and Joan Zarco leads the field out for this sighting lap. They'll do 1 lap to the grid, and then at 15 minutes past the hour, the Indonesian Grand Prix will be underway. World champion Fabio Quartararo starts from pole position. Just how much has his wet weather riding come on since last season? Of course, it was his difficulties in the wet conditions and mixed conditions that saw him start the Grand Prix that eventually concluded with him as world champion back in the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix last year from 15th on the grid. Can he put those problems behind him and give his world championship defence the kickstart that it needs?
This is a massive step into the unknown for these MotoGP riders. They've done barely a handful of wet weather laps. Certainly the track wasn't as wet as this on Saturday morning. So this really is stepping into the unknown territory. Who's going to quickly master the conditions? Who's going to take the big risks? Jack Miller, well, you know that he's so good in the wet conditions. He's proven to be strong on the Ducati and the Honda in the past. Of course, it's mixed condition. He took that famous win at the Dutch TT in Assen back in 2016. Who else has got really strong wet weather prowess in this field? Frankie Morbidelli's actually not a bad wet weather rider. Other guys with nothing to lose really, Andrea Dovizioso, particularly on a factory Ducati, where you can always put your money on him to be a big threat in these rain conditions. You've got to say, the way that Fabio Quartararo has thrown that Yamaha around that second sector, there's been a lot of feedback from the World Superbike riders here and the Moto3 riders who had a couple of wet sessions, that the grip levels here in the rain at this Mandalika circuit are very, very good. Very, very good indeed. So you can see the guys are just out there now trying to understand where the patches of water are, where the water's perhaps at its worst, and then also just work out the grip levels. Pecco Bagnaia, also relatively inexperienced in terms of wet weather riding in MotoGP as well.
Alex Rins is a rider I'd perhaps point to as well, who might have half a chance in these conditions. He starts in the middle of the third row in 8th place. Pit lane closes in 4 minutes time, which is why you're seeing riders come back down pit lane. They do have time to do this. This isn't like the quick restart procedure where you have 60 seconds to get out there before the pit lane closes again. So understandably, some of the smart cookies on this grid, the two Pramac riders, the two Suzuki riders, taking the opportunity to do an extra lap of the track before they pull up on the grid, just to get a little bit more information, just to see where some of the damper patches are, where some of the grip levels are. KTM, of course, they'll fancy their chances this afternoon. Brad Binder, last time we saw conditions like this, was winning a race on slicks. Of course, he won't be running them today. Miguel Oliveira also looking good. He starts 7th on the grid. Their team boss, Francesco Guidotti, is speaking now with Simon.
Francesco, we now step into the unknown. I'd love to know how your riders go into this race, how they've been feeling in the box, and we do know how in the unknown Brad often pulls out something special. What are your thoughts?
Difficult to have an opinion, difficult to predict something. We never raced here before, and the conditions are completely different than the test and the practice for the weekend. So yeah, let's start and we'll see. But the guys are in a good mood. Both of them usually perform well in the wet conditions. So yeah, finger crossed and let's go.
Best of luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to Francesco Guidotti. A great start, as Lewis said, for the KTM team in Doha. Brad Binder, his third podium finish in the Premier class. I wonder if he's going to tempt to go out on slick tyres. Joking, of course. That was, of course, his brilliant victory at the Red Bull Ring in the Austrian Grand Prix last year. So finally, we are getting the grid forming here at the Pertamina Mandalika circuit in Indonesia. Pramac Ducati await their man, Jorge Martin and Johan Zarco, both going from the front row of the grid. Brad Binder, there's going to be some nerve jangling now, because as we mentioned, we can't overemphasise, this is a complete blank canvas, a complete journey into the unknown for these guys. They've never raced before here in Mandalika. They've certainly got very little experience of wet weather conditions. In some respects, it might be a bit of a lottery, but it's certainly going to provide some nail-biting entertainment. We hope you have stuck with us over the last hour and a half or so when our coverage for MotoGP started. I'm sure you have. Why would you go anywhere? It's the greatest motorsport show on earth, as we look at Enea Bastianini starting from the middle of that second row. Binder and Bastianini, Lewis, in the dry. You really fancy them to be strong, given they've excelled in the Doha from really good qualifying performances. Let's quickly pop down to the grid again. Piero Taramasso and Michelin, they've been thrown an 11th hour curveball, haven't they, by these tricky conditions? Simon's with the Michelin Motorsport manager, Piero Taramasso.
Yes, Piero, some new conditions for you to make the weekend even tougher. Can you tell us what tyres the riders will go for?
Yeah, in this condition, the choice is medium front and medium rear. This is the one because the track temperature is still quite high, is around 25, 26 degrees. And also because here, the tricky point is the overheating on the right side. With the soft compound, the problem that you might overheat too much, you lose grip. With the medium, will be much more stable. So this is the best choice for this condition.
Thank you, Piero.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks to Piero Taramasso. We're just running through this revised grid now, of course, revised, sadly, because 8 times world champion Marc Marquez has been ruled out of this delayed Indonesian Grand Prix. There was the president then, Mr. Joko Widodo, who was finally, after all of his effort and all the effort of the authorities here in Indonesia, it looks like, thankfully, we are going to get MotoGP action here in Indonesia for the first time since 1997.
Well, the Shaman certainly did the trick in the end. We got the race we were hoping for.
Yeah, whatever that lady's name was.